Thanks for joining us. Jamie, Jeremy, Richard, Rob. This is awesome. Thanks for taking the time out of the day to join this. This is Ninja RMM's, let's see, fourth live MSP chat. And we wanted to do one especially for folks based in EMEA. So to introduce myself, I'm Jonathan Crow. I'm Director of Content at Ninja. We've also got a few other folks on the line here. We've got Tom Watson, who is our Channel Chief Advisor. Tom, you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Hi, it's nice to have everyone here today. I joined the Ninja team beginning of the year, and my role as Channel Chief Advisor is I'm working with Jonathan and others on providing content specific to MSPs. I'm a former MSP owner. I owned one for 15 years in East Coast of the United States and sold it several years ago. And now I work on this side with the mission of just bringing the best content to you guys and helping out in any way I can to help you grow your businesses or deal with times like we're going through right now.
Thank you, Tom. And then we also have Andre Schindler, who is the General Manager for EMEA. Andre, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, everyone. I'm really glad to be here and hopefully talk to everyone. Name is Andre Schindler, General Manager for EMEA for Ninja. Working with Ninja since a good 2 years now here out of Berlin. We have a team of 25 people here ready to serve EMEA and hopefully you guys. And my agenda today is really to figure out where you guys are and how we can help you to be successful in all of these times.
Thanks, Andre. And then in the background here, we have Sammy Coleman, who is on marketing coordinator on Ninja's team, and she's going to be working all the logistics here to make sure this session goes smoothly. She's been doing an awesome job with the previous chats, so thank you, Sammy. And in the background, you also may hear my son, Wyatt. I'm working from home. It's extraordinary times. He may burst in with a comment or two. But really, this session is meant for giving you guys a space to connect. We can all share kind of where we're at right now, what's going on with their particular situation. We do have an agenda doc that you're seeing right now, and I think Sammy's going to be sharing that in the chat. Also in the chat, we're just to kind of encourage conversation amongst everyone. I think we're asking, where's everybody calling in from? I know situations can vary a lot depending on where you're at. We even have this in the doc here in terms of the stage of lockdown, in terms of what you're seeing and kind of what the stage of potential recovery from all this, where things are at. So really, this is meant to be a place where we can be connecting with people who are in the same boat as us, but also people who are in different boats, potentially some people who are further along in the process. It's almost like being able to glimpse into the future a little bit. And the whole goal is to talk about some challenges here and share some solutions. And so the topic that we picked for this session is client requests and communications. And what we mean by that, there's going to be some focuses. It's really during this time, we've seen stateside things kind of progress from that initial flurry of work from home requests down into another period where as restrictions are stretching on longer, there's some economic hardships that are setting in. MSPs are getting outreach from their clients, and they're starting to see requests about discounts, deferrals. How can you be flexible to help me out here? And it's obviously a touchy subject. Communication's key there. So Tom, do you want to say anything about kind of last week's chat and some of the highlights that came out to you?
Yes, absolutely. Just real quick, wanted to note on the chat, if people want to contribute, please be sure if you want to send it to everyone to make sure you're sending to all panelists and attendees. And I see that Jamie tells us here, Newcastle upon Tyne, UK. And if everyone else wants to join in there and tell us where you're from, that'd be great. We've done now several of these chats, and I think they've been very successful, just giving people some answers to things. And last week we did a chat, and now we're kind of rebooting that for the EMEA audience, and we're really looking forward to this. We're going to go into specifically some areas I find particularly important. Are your contracts covering you? I think it's been so long since there's been something like a pandemic or a shutdown in countries that many of you are not protected. And then we're also going to talk a little bit briefly at the end of my piece about the new Ninja Managed Service Agreement, which may be of interest to some people.
Yeah, and then thank you, Tom. And Andre, I know you wanted to mention a few words about, with everybody calling in from various places, how this chat's going to work.
Yeah, so thanks again everyone to joining. It's great to see that so many countries are actually in the webinar. Given that we're EMEA total, so we're pretty much from a lot of countries, people joining. We will hold the webinar in English, but please feel free to either speak up, chat with us. We will try to cover this as best as possible, and please don't be shy. Nobody's judging on language, etc. I'm not a native speaker either. So we're looking forward for you guys to participate.
Absolutely. And so a few more notes about that. Sammy, if you don't mind, we can open up the link that says how to participate. And again, guys, you should have, I think if you scroll back up to the top of the chat, you'll have this agenda doc. And so the way this chat will work is we can use the agenda doc. You can feel free to jump ahead. There's links to a lot of the resources that we'll be talking about, so you can follow on your own in addition to seeing what's being shared on the screen here. A few quick just logistical things. For anyone who's not as familiar with Zoom, there's a few things we're going to take advantage of to make this really interactive. The first, obviously, is chat. And Tom brought up the really important point. Make sure if you want everyone to see, which that's what we primarily want to do here, when you're chatting, I think that it's by default, it's set to maybe just panelists. Make sure that in the blue bar on the side there, it's saying all panelists and all attendees. And that way, it'll make sure that everyone's seeing your comment. In addition to that, you can also use the Q&A function. And that's something where if you want to ask a question, either just to make sure that we get it, because the chat can get kind of busy. If you want to make sure that we see something that's a direct question, you can add that there. We'll be sure to see it and provide an answer to that on the air. Also, if you want to provide ask a question anonymously, you have an option to do that. So if there's something in the chat, you get your name there. If you want to ask something where your name's not attached to it, feel free to go to the Q&A and do that. And then finally, there's a raise hand function, and you can do that to basically say like, hey, yeah, I've got something to say here. So as we go through the agenda, go through these topics, if there's something that comes up and you say, oh, I've got a good experience to share, feel free to raise your hand or just in the chat, let us know, and we'll bring you on. So with that, let's dive in. First, we're going to launch a poll. And I want to iterate here as we launch this poll. This is a little bit of a downer question. Our goal with this session is not to be focused all on the negative. I think it's important to get a feel for how everyone's doing, but we're going to also shift focus and really focus on the things we can control and share some wins and everything too. So this is not all going to be negative, I promise. So we're launching this poll. Have you had clients ask to put their services on hold or cancel, just to get a sense of kind of where everybody's at? And answers coming in. Thank you for doing this. Let me give that another second here. And I'll go ahead and share the results. So it looks like it's fairly split. There is a slightly more than half of you calling in have done that. Have seen clients doing this, but a big portion of you have not, which is great. But that's something where, again, going back to the previous comment, this, depending on where you're at, what verticals you're servicing that your clients are in, this may be something that they will never have to do, or it may be something that's coming down the line. So it'll be good to get that perspective for the people who are dealing with this actively now, what's going on. So I'm just curious, for those who answered yes in the chat, if you want to mention kind of where where you're located, or maybe what verticals those clients are in, because obviously some verticals are being hit harder than others in terms of closures and everything.
And Jonathan, I just want to throw in here too, is kind of a part of this. Maybe there's someone out there who they had a client that this moved to remote, or maybe they're a very critical business. Maybe there's been a growth opportunity or something like that come out of it. where we've had the opposite situation where maybe a client's scaling up. And I'll just mention, we'd love to hear from you in the chat on that. And if someone has a particular story like that, we'd love for you to jump on the mic with us and talk to us about it. Or if you have a particular situation where you've managed a client cutting back and you've done so, like I know we talked on an earlier webinar about this, you've done a way that benefited both the client and you. Maybe you're able then to provide service at a lower cost to you. So maybe there's a win out of some of these things is what I'm looking at. And if someone has some kind of win or particular situation or a question they want to pose to us on how to handle something, we'd love to hear about it. Well, yeah, I got an interesting one here. An event management company asked to suspend support until in September. Yeah, that's a tough one. And I think, Jonathan, that brings up kind of a really good point too about verticals. You know, right. we run into this situation with verticals, and I know I covered about 7 verticals, my MSP. But I had, like, for example, legal was like probably 40% of my revenue. And that wouldn't be a bad situation these days. These lawyers are able to all work from home, from what I can tell. But that brings up an interesting thing. If you've got particular verticals you're focused on, how is it kind of hitting you particular in that area?
Yeah, absolutely. And it also brings up an interesting thing too. You know, some of the best practice advice I've been seeing prior to all this was you should absolutely specialize in a vertical. Now, in retrospect, what if you specialize in hospitality or retail? That would be very bad. And so now I'm seeing people recommend diversifying as much as you can, and or trying to be a little bit more mindful of, well, if this is going to be an ongoing type of situation or something that recurs, maybe you try to make an active shift to some industries that are a little bit more remote ready, I guess.
Yeah. Maybe to add to that part, we obviously very closely talked to other MSPs too over the last weeks, and we have very much seen a difference in MSPs who are focused on the vertical, and this is a hit or miss. Either you have the right vertical or you don't at the moment, and we're seeing the MSPs who actually diversified and use 2, 3, maybe even 4 verticals. And while one of them might break down, they had the possibility to shift over or just simply increase demand on another vertical. That helped them tremendously on the business side. So now is definitely the right time to diversify if you have the possibility and the time to do so.
Yeah, just to be specific, we had some questions about verticals. Verticals is just kind of a IT channel way of saying different industries. So an MSP would typically, you call it medical vertical, legal vertical. You might have manufacturing, retail, hospitality, entertainment. Those are different verticals you might see. And I've got, an interesting one here. I just saw Phil Stratton says, both clients are motor dealers, so we gave them a discount on our managed services. And this is kind of going to come later in our conversation. And I don't know if Phil wants to jump on here with us for a minute, but that's an interesting one because we know that people are driving less right now. But that is going to be one that I think is going to come back. And it's kind of interesting is what is the discount to them, and how are you going to try to recoup that later on, or are you? I don't know.
Yeah, Phil, if you're interested, we can get you on. And while we're doing that, we can launch our next poll as well, which is all about, are you offering discounts?
I think we have Phil on.
Phil, how are you?
Yeah, hi, good, thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Essentially, it was a goodwill gesture to enable the client to carry on trading, because basically they were looking at losing a lot. They got 25 staff who they were having to furlough, and a fairly large site. And so we were just trying to help them really to survive, because they're a significant customer of ours.
How did the customer react to it?
They reacted by saying it wasn't adequate, and they turned off a few computers. Not that makes a big difference in a managed service platform, but we recognized the reduction and accommodated that. They basically wanted to give it to them for nothing, but that wasn't an option.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, that's good to hear. Yeah, I think that's a problem, is that people think that hey, they're not doing as well, they can just shut things off completely. But as we've talked about before, as you know, and it feels you shut off some service completely or some licensing, there's startup fees getting back into things. And that's something that I'm a big believer in, is not completely negating money. It may be a discount or just pushing that payment ahead, but making sure you're still billing, you're getting something from that client.
Yeah.
And that you have a set date you're going to return to the full payment.
Yeah.
And very often a gesture also goes a long way. These are people which you will keep for multiple years actually, because they had a hard time and you're helping them out. So it's
that was the view.
Yeah.
And
it does raise such an interesting question though. It's all seems to be about a balance, because we can look at the poll results here, like you were going to say, Tom. Sorry to interrupt. So it looks like, again, fairly split. Around 60% no discounts, and 42% yes, but only when asked. This is something that matches up pretty well with what the chat we did last week when we asked this question in the States. There's definitely a hesitation, aversion to offering discounts. And I can imagine once you set that precedent, it becomes a slippery slope. That said, I do want to go down in our agenda doc. Sammy, if you don't mind scrolling down, we say.
I had something real quick on this
Sure.
polling question. Yeah, I didn't see anyone say proactively, and I just like to throw out to everyone there. I went through this in like the Great Recession, and you could tell certain verticals that were going to hurt, or we're going to pay slow, or that we're going to cut back, or you can see clients start to cut back or ask questions. And I would just say, one big advantage of going to a client when you know they're going to ask for it eventually is you can kind of control the conversation a little more, and you can control that discount, because you're making the offer and gesture that will be remembered, but you also can get ahead of it and have a plan. And maybe it's not going to be as severe as what they would ask for in terms of a deduction. And I would just say, if you have a chance and you see that coming, proactively contact those clients and say, hey, listen, I've got a program for this where we're doing reductions, and this is how it works. That gives you a level of protection going in. And we'll get to that in a little bit more in some of the clauses I came up with.
Yeah, Phil, thank you for sharing that. And just to provide another perspective too, and anyone else who'd like to come on as well, I'd like to hear from you. But yeah, Sammy, if we can go to these two approaches here. This is from a chat on Reddit, of course, and specifically around discounts. And I thought this was interesting because it's a very interesting thread to kind of read. To get to the subject that we're talking about, a lot of different perspectives. And here we have this approach that I see is being echoed here in the comments a little bit. I apologize if I mispronounced your name, but Imran, saying we decided to help clients when they ask for a reduction in their IT costs. We've taken the view that to retain whatever we can and not lose those clients in their future business. It's all about, everyone's going through a really tough time right now. What can we do to be flexible, to help people? Because as Andre pointed out, these are relationships they're lasting for years. They're going to remember this. They're going to stick with you. They're also going to provide referrals in the future. So if we look at this Reddit comment, it's something similar, although taking it a bit of a step further. It says, so far, 3 MSP clients we have cut monthly rates about 50% for this month. We'll reevaluate each month going forward. And this has led to 5 referrals in 1 week's time. So it's kind of showing that by being flexible, they're already kind of seeing some business, doing whatever it takes basically to retain a client. But then if you go back, Sammy, to the second comment, we have someone from an MSP from the UK talking specifically about discounts. And providing the perspective that they actually, we provided a 30% discount on project work. And this is going back to, the initial work from home spike. And then a 10% further discount on general support for the month. Finally, deferred invoicing. And they decided to offer this proactively. But then making the point that what you should not be doing is working for free or giving customers or having customers guilt you into excessive discounts. And so what I wanted to bring up with these comments is this fine balance between wanting to be flexible and be there for your clients and establish that goodwill. And then also up to a point, right? You can't do something that harms your business. So I'm just kind of curious with the people that have been agreeing to discounts, where the line is. Have you already known that going into these discussions of, okay, this is what we can do? Or is that something that you're kind of working on a case-by-case basis?
From my perspective, I've been working on a case-by-case perspective because some of my clients aren't impacted particularly by COVID-19. And so we've only offered discounts to people that we've known would be impacted, like in the motor industry or in architecture or something like that, which is really struggling right now.
Right. Well, and actually, I'd like to come back to the discounts portion in a second, but Phil, while we have you on, I'm just curious, going to Tom's earlier point, has there been any kind of an opposite effect, especially early on for you with different verticals that you saw where it actually has resulted in some more work for you?
Absolutely. I mean, there is more work. In fact, we've had to make them all able to work from home, but the fact that you extended your platform to be able to facilitate that was really helpful.
That's great to hear.
That's great. Yeah. I don't know if you want to talk about specifics about that, or how did you add some billing on when you kind of set up these work from home? You're giving them more access to tools. How did you kind of handle that, and how has that kind of made more revenue in some areas for you?
It will make more revenue ultimately, but I didn't think it was appropriate to charge them more money when they were already going down the pan in terms of what they were suffering. I felt that it was goodwill to be able to facilitate that. If they continue using it after COVID-19, I'll charge them a fee. But in this process, I just felt it was goodwill, that we were demonstrating a support, a commitment to them, which hopefully will pay off in the longer term because they're looking for a long-term relationship, not just a short-term one.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a trend we've seen, that maybe you do the setup for free and maybe give them a few months, but that's something I would recommend, like in some kind of addendum. We'll get into that later, but saying, hey, listen, we're doing the setup from home and we're letting you use these tools to go along with it for free, as you know, given the current situation. However, in 3 months' time, we're going to begin billing for it at this amount. Because as we all know, as MSP owners out there, it's very easy to get kind of scope creep on what you're providing to clients. And once they're getting something for a certain cost or no cost, they kind of come to expect it, and they'll forget the conditions surrounding it. They'll just look at it from a billing perspective. So having that in writing, I think, is critical.
I think Olivier also had a good point that for some customers, it makes sense for, if they just have a cash flow problem at the moment, to maybe just ease off on collection, but not on billing. So just simply say, kind of give them a loan, where you say, okay, part of the cash we're getting now, but if it gets better afterwards, we're getting that money. It will just be delayed on a later point. So that's also an option you will have, and maybe don't even need to avoid any or not getting any cash out of it.
I just want to point out real quick, we've got some comments in the Q&A, and I'm not sure if people maybe wanted to put them into the chat. I would say the Q&A is primarily if you want to message us anonymously and have us answer something, but overall, everyone's going to see it in the chat, and we'll certainly pull out questions we see in there as we're going along.
There are some interesting things there in the Q&A, and like you mentioned, Andre with Olivier, and yeah, the idea of the deferrals or putting off payments is pretty interesting. Just curious on other people's thoughts there. I mean, obviously you run the risk of kicking the can down the road and then them being in a worse situation later on. Just kind of curious how people feel about that. Tom, if you had an experience back in 2008 with a situation like that too.
Yeah, well, the big situations I ran to in 2008 were cash flow. And that's kind of where I center my conversations around that is, and I think it's an important conversation to have with clients. You know, if this is a time when clients might be pulling on you more, they might want more services to get things set up like this. And if they're kind of a la carte, they're getting paying as they go, that could be a real problem. You want to make sure these services are contracted for. You're updating those contracts, at least an addendum, or getting an email reply that confirms what you're giving them. But my thing is, I would just be very concerned at these times that clients could kind of inadvertently take advantage of an MSP, and an MSP might not be able to recoup that situation.
Well, I think this kind of naturally goes into, as you know, we're talking discounts, we're talking deferrals, contract changes. One of the ways that you can kind of protect yourself there and make everything a little bit more official, rather than having these often what can be very emotional conversations, rather than just having things rely on those, having something on paper and in writing could be very helpful. And so, Tom, we could get go ahead and dive into your some of your contract language. You could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, well, there's a really interesting situation. Over the last couple of months, I've been working with the rest of the Ninja team and taking a managed service agreement, and we wanted to be able to provide one to Ninja partners. And in doing so, I was updating it, and of course, then this COVID-19 situation happened, and I went back to the paragraphs that had to do with force majeure clauses, had to do with, disasters, what happens, and realized that the contract really didn't cover well pandemics and also the situation we're under, because no one really could foresee the idea of things just shutting down and what that does to response times, what that does to the promise of on-site support, all of those things, especially things when you're handling a whole bunch. You go from handling a couple internet connections to you're basically managing 30, 40, dozens of them. And also the problem with that being that these are home connections and not commercial connections. So what we did was I sat down with an attorney who I'd worked with in my MSP days, and we wrote some updated language and clauses, which we're going to pull up on the screen. I'm going to run you through them. And I do realize this was written like in the US by myself, an attorney. And I mean, every country's different jurisdictions and contract language, but a lot of these things are just going to be common sense. I don't know, Jonathan, can you pull that document up?
Yeah, I think Sammy's going to do that. Yeah, and to that point too, this at least gives you a place to start, right? And we are seeing some interest in the comments. Do you have a link to the sample contract? So right now we'll focus on just the force majeure clauses, but Tom he has been sharing the full template, and so he can follow up with that after this chat.
And you guys can reply to the email that you received from Ninja, and we'll get back to you with the actual contract. But I'm just bringing that up in terms of went back to this contract and wanted to really beef up the sections that have to do with, what happens if there's, basically acts of God, as we often call them legally, and what you do about that, and then remote access and response times. And, even if it's not really specific to the US, because you're going to find similar clauses used in every contract in every country. What's important is their common sense and they're protecting your MSP and identifying to the client exactly where you are. And I wouldn't recommend just really throwing one of these things down in front of a client right now, but you might want to use some of these clauses like in an addendum. Like, for example, you might want this remote access clause in particular, where it's kind of explaining, we'll do everything we can, but also you're adding a bunch of internet connections that aren't commercial and we didn't set up. We have to devolve ourselves with some responsibility for those. But also, if we scroll down in the document, we wrote some additional clauses here that I would say could even be dropped into an email. Like if you have a client, and like I said, proactively, if you see a client starting to falter a little bit, you're noticing less activity on their network, less machines, whatever they're doing. Not everyone can work from home. Maybe it's manufacturing, something like that. These are some clauses that you could even drop into an email and be like, hey, listen, we're gonna help you out. We're gonna reduce things, and we're gonna defer billing like this one by a percentage over X number of months, and then beginning will be added back. And I would say you could send these as a written addendum or just getting an email reply from someone that they agree to these terms. It allows you to kind of cover yourself. And then we took all these updated agreements and we put them into that managed service agreement, which we will make available to everyone.
Yeah, and I mean, again, I think there's probably a balance here, right? Of people wanting to be sensitive to everyone's situation. If people are really struggling right now in a bad situation, immediately tossing a new contract at them may not be the best approach. But I think the point you're making here, Tom, is that finding a time to do that, if it's not right away, a little further down the line, just getting what you're having in conversations down in writing and agreed upon is important.
You know, Jonathan, the other thing, we've gotten some really interesting feedback from Ninja partners that some of them are having kind of more time to address things they've been on the back burner for a while.
Right.
And I think we have a poll kind of about this, about the agreements. And I would say, and we can probably pop that up, I would say that a lot of people out there realize, kind of like I did when I was working on this agreement, that parts of it weren't up to date. It's an opportunity to update that agreement. And then as clients renew, you've got like the upgraded language and you're handling things a little bit better.
And I think this is a very important point. Well, we all know this will be over at one point, or at least it will be ease out. These are scenarios which can come up in a year or even in 2 years. So while we're at it, there might be a good time now to actually prepare for it, even if it's just new clients, not your existing clients.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're going to get that poll launched just to kind of see on that. There's Andre, the quote that comes to mind when you said that was the terrible thing about crises is that they always happen. The wonderful thing is they always end. But here we go. We launched the poll about your managed services agreement. This is the sense that we're getting from a lot of people that, how could you have anticipated something like this? Now can certainly be a good time to revisit it. Make sure that you're prepared not only for a situation and extenuating circumstances like these, but also just looking back. I mean, Tom, I know that you were saying a lot of people that you've talked with, they've had the same agreement for years now, and it's been outdated for a while, just generally.
Absolutely. And the one that comes to mind with this situation, of course, is the remote work, that you have promised a client unlimited support and haven't been specific about what that is or the setups. And my big thing would be in an updated contract that if you put in there, hey, listen, if there is a large move in this direction, we're going to have to bill you, because I'm sure there's MSPs out there that are in a situation where they're giving away a huge amount of work to get things set, or maybe even more management costs because they're handling so many more additional endpoints, or they're handling so many more internet connections that are problematic because they're home-based routers, that kind of thing, security issues. And that's my big thing, is upgrading your contract so that it kind of covers you in the future. So you're not calling these situations, because now we know. And as we probably know, not to gloom and doom, but we're probably going to be through a series of what we're going through right now over the coming years. And my thing would be upgrade that contract. And if clients start asking you for a lot and want you to do things that aren't covered in your contract, that might be the opening that you need to go in there and say, okay, we're at a point where we have to back off and we have to talk about our agreement, because at this point, it's not fair to us because our costs are this. And my belief with clients is transparency. And there's nothing wrong with telling a client that a contract's no longer profitable to you. And it's important to be able to have that conversation with them, because it's very easy in these circumstances to go from a profitable situation to unprofitable because you're giving away too much. And at that point, it becomes completely acceptable to do a contract renegotiation.
And then also too, I mean, Tom, I know it's come up in terms of shifting to opportunities here. In our previous discussion, there was quite a few folks who were saying, we've actually now we've had some of those stubborn break-fix clients who were resisting converting to a managed services agreement. Now we're actually getting them over because we're able to point out, in a situation like this, I mean, this is how we're going to prioritize the managed services agreement, folks. I mean, this is how you get basically save your slot for ensuring that you're going to get our help through something like this. So maybe it's a good opportunity.
Yeah, sorry, that's a great point, is that maybe you have someone you're kind of doing break fix for or something like that. And now the things that are asking for in the level of management, handling all those other connections and other endpoints, maybe it's at a point where, and they're not as hurt. Maybe it's like a law firm and everyone's working remote, but now you're getting more help desk calls because you're dealing with all this extra equipment and connections. maybe that's a point where you can say, listen, what you're asking for from us is something we provide under a managed services agreement and not what you're currently under. So in order for us to give you what you want, we've got to get this settled.
I'm looking at the comments, the chat here, and I wonder, Simon, if you wouldn't mind coming on. I'm looking back at your comment about Office 365 licensing, because that gets into a whole host of things that we could talk about. One of the things here, you mentioned that we've offered to look at the Office 365 licensing, help them reduce where they can. This represents a reasonable size reduction for them, but a low hit for us. One of the points there is for those clients who are struggling and looking for reductions. We may have mentioned this before, but one option is to look at the types of services that you're providing. Is there anything that's non-essential for them that's also low margin for you that you can proactively kind of reach out and cut back on? Or this Office 365 approach, this kind of goes into, I know a lot of companies are also furloughing people right now. And so how is everyone handling that? Are you being expected to keep those accounts active? Have you found any creative ways to do it? I know Tom, maybe we can get into one of the solutions that an MSP in the last week's chat kind of mentioned, but Simon, it looks like you're on. We'd love to hear a little bit more about what you're doing.
Well, with the Office 365 bit, obviously our margins are only 10 to 15% from Microsoft on that. So if I can convert accounts to shared mailboxes to shared mailboxes, take premium mailboxes down to essentials mailboxes, that saves the client a reasonable amount. There is a 1 month lag with Microsoft as a CSP, but it's a way of making a gesture that actually doesn't hit our margin very, very hard.
Yeah, I think Jonathan's referring to something we heard last week, where we had a particular MSP that had a huge, I guess there were a lot of staff cutbacks at some type of entity that would probably be adding those people back later on. And what the MSP was doing was taking one email account, Office 365, and putting like 20 to 30 aliases on the back end of it to continue being able to receive email for those people. So allowed them to kind of a little loophole there. I'm not all about hacking Microsoft here, but it allowed them to cut way back on the billings very quickly and give the client some leeway, but still maintain that ability to receive emails with the idea they would just roll those back into full accounts later on.
I think, though, that indirect CSP, certainly Microsoft bills 1 month in arrears. So the client's not going to see the actual billing impact of that very quickly.
Yeah. But yeah, it gives you ability, though. You could then go back to the client and explain to them, we're going to be able to keep your addresses, but you still have to pay for the next 30 days because we have to pay for the next 30 days. And that's the transparency I think is important. If you're incurring charges, or if there are going to be charges to cut things off and there's going to be a delay from when you cut them off to what you pay, which is often at least 30 days, there's nothing wrong with showing that to the client or telling them that and then giving them a solution like I just mentioned with the mailboxes. But that's my big thing is that level of transparency between you and the clients, because they just often think that they can turn things on and off. And they don't realize there's sometimes startup costs, there's your time, and there's shutdown costs in terms of delay.
Yeah.
Yeah, this has come up too, where this is one of those moments where it may become painfully clear that some clients don't actually know exactly everything that you're doing for them, and this is an opportunity for that to become clear one way or the other. Thanks, Simon, for coming on with that. Andre, you mentioned there's a question from Thorsten that you wanted to discuss.
Yep, correct. So actually a little bit more complex question, I think, but it's an interesting point on it, that a lot of companies are in general not ready on their IT infrastructure. So very independent of COVID-19, that might be an issue within the next 1 to 5 years anyway with these companies. Where COVID-19 might actually have increased their pressure on updating their IT systems. Would be interesting for the group to see if if this, I know this is specifically an issue in Germany, actually, because we're a little bit behind digitalization, but would be interesting from all of the other countries too, and how they're seeing the companies and how good their IT infrastructure actually is, and if were they set up for the crisis, were they completely unprepared, are they now actually interested in spending more on IT now that they need to, be it remote office, be it general infrastructure, etc.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see those comments. It does kind of flow into shifting over into the positive end of things from all this. We've been having conversations where there's a little bit of a, you may want to refrain from saying "I told you so," but there's certainly lots of opportunities to do that now. We're hearing lots of stories about MSPs dealing with clients where they're like, we told them over and over again, we need to be going in this direction, setting up for something where they're going to be more remote ready, and just improving and modernizing their IT infrastructure in general. And there was hesitation there. And one silver lining, I suppose, from this event is, wow, what an important event to show your value as an IT provider, to show how integral you can be in keeping business operations afloat. And maybe after all this, they'll be listening to you a little bit more.
Jonathan, you have a great point. Something I'd like to bring up to everyone here that you all know, maybe it's not at the forefront of your mind, is that you are all experts in disaster and disaster recovery, preparedness. This is what you built your careers on. You've always been there to save the day and to get things up and running. And so this is on a larger scale, but this is, for I think most of the people on this call, this is not outside your comfort zone. And I would say that you carry across that message to your clients with very positive statements to the effect of, listen, we deal with disaster. We always have, and we've got you covered. Because getting that confidence from the clients is so important. And like I said, transparency, telling them where you are with things, if you're backed up, if you're not making money on something because of what they're doing, but most importantly, that reassuring message that this is going to carry through the times and to a long-term relationship and them sitting with you, that you've got this covered. You have an answer to the question, you have an answer to long-term, but also at the same time, taking the opportunity for the future of, hey, you remember when we told you guys that we needed to move that file server to some type of online system, that we needed to get it so it wasn't based on your local network, that we needed to upgrade your internet connection at your office to be able to allow more remote bandwidth. Well, those things we mentioned, that's why this is important now. And for us to continue what we're doing and provide you, we need you to start thinking about that and move things forward. This is a wonderful opportunity to showcase your experiences, but also turn it into a sales opportunity for later on, because they're going to hear you now when you talk about what they should have done and what they need to do. And you can probably get it on the books for some work later on as things lighten up.
Yeah, absolutely. If we can go back to the agenda doc, actually, there's a few points this kind of flows into. And so the discussion's about client communication overall, right? And so aside from dealing with these requests from the customers who are hurting, we want to talk about some proactive ways that you're staying in communication with your clients in general. From what we've heard, I mean, communication plays such a key role in all of this, what's going on right now. Everyone's in a strange, uncomfortable place, and the worst thing you can do is to go silent. So how are folks taking opportunities to be proactive and reach out to customers? What types of things are you doing to get everyone to stay connected? That's something that I think would be interesting to discuss. And we've got some ideas to share too, that we've heard from others that we've been thinking about ourselves.
Yeah, I got an interesting comment from Imran Chowdhury on here. Some clients might not be affected by cash flow. I mean, there's going to be people that professional offices, consulting companies that just moved to working from home, and it might be time to get that project underway. I know at my MSP, I always took advantage of that time between Christmas and New Year's and did these big projects both in-house and at clients. I would say take this opportunity if you can, and you've had someone sitting on if you know they're doing well and not cutting back, because you can tell. You can run reports in Ninja. You can look at that level of activity. You know what license they're using, and go in there and go to them. Hey, listen, that quote you've been sitting on for that new server or from that move to a new internet connection or something like that. We need to get that done. Don't be afraid to pitch them on some new work if it's going to enhance their business and you can tell they're not hurting, and use the intel you have to make that determination.
To that point too, I know that marketing may not be the top priority for everyone right now, but if you are doing some projects for people, what better way to show and to kind of alert the people who are receptive to that, that, hey, we are actively doing projects for people. Maybe it's time to, if there is any kind of a lull or downtime, think about doing some case studies, highlighting some projects that are ongoing right now. I've seen some MSPs do some creative stuff where they're highlighting how they're handling sanitizing hardware and getting it shipped out. It's good content to have too, showing that you're on top of the crisis. You're taking measures to make people feel more comfortable about you carrying on your business. And it shows you're being thoughtful, and it shows you're being active. Hey guys, we're still in business. We're still helping people who are out there who need our help.
There's also, I think there's also the right time now to maybe expand your marketing, be it getting new customers. I know that a lot of MSPs rely on word of mouth, but they would love to do more SEO and actually get out there and try to get completely new customers who are actually not out of the current pool of customers or prospects. So there might be a good chance now to actually invest time to do that. We also have a little bit of marketing material actually available for that, because we hear quite a lot of requests from our customers or from our partners on how to do that. So maybe Jonathan, maybe we want to quickly show that part too.
Yeah, I just want to point something out real quick. That's a great point, Andre, is that there might be MSPs out there that don't have your capabilities, or have lost employees or already cut back. There might be clients out there who are looking and need someone that can support them in what they're doing now. And maybe you have that technology, enhancing your SEO, your AdWords, coming up with, I always really like to do vertical industry specific one-page slicks about how we handled a certain vertical really well and distribute those. And I think that's great. And Jonathan, you hit on something I think was really important. Some people out there might think that you're just in disaster mode and you're just dealing with what's right in front of you. They might not think to ask you for an upgrade to a system. They might not think to bring up the quote you did before. And it may be an opportunity to tell, especially if you've got things under wraps at your company and you have bandwidth. I think it's a time to address these and say, hey, listen, we now have time because we've got our clients remote. We've got everything set up. We got everything squared away. We have extra bandwidth to address the issues that we didn't before, a major fix or a major migration or a new server. So let's talk about that now, because they might not bring it up to you if they want something new at this point. They might just think it's disaster mode and maintaining. But if you have the bandwidth to do so, use that opportunity to go after that business.
Yeah, and I mean, we're talking about some, you mentioned SEO, AdWords, some paid opportunities. I know that now can be, with everything that we see coming in terms of recession, it can be a hard decision to make, to continue pouring money into marketing. There's some things, I guess, counter to that, if everyone's AdWords, I think we found actually internally with Ninja, there's some cases where things have become cheaper for us now because a lot of people are backing off. So that's something to consider. And then at the same time, there's also free things that you can do, free in terms of not cash. It's going to take some of your time though. But one idea that I wanted to call out is consider holding an event sort of like this, except having to be with your clients. And so that's something, just getting them on. Maybe there's a subsection of your clients that are all in one vertical, or maybe one area, or maybe you just think they're kind of like-minded, or maybe you want to open up to all of your clients, inviting them onto a Zoom session or whatever you want to use, and having it be a simple networking session where you're the person who's bringing them all together and giving them an opportunity to talk about what's going on with them, what are the challenges. Maybe each of them can provide each other some solutions. I think that could be a really valuable thing where you're positioning yourself as not only a thought leader. In this case, you'd be showing that you don't need to necessarily even have all the answers for them. There's a lot of value in just bringing people together right now. I think a lot of people are feeling isolated, and there's real value in connecting like this. And so to help with that, we're actually working on a post right now that explains how we've gone through launching the series ourselves. It's really just kind of sharing our playbook. We're pretty, as you can see, transparent about it with our Google Doc and everything that's going on. But that post will really walk through kind of step by step how you could do something similar. So it's an idea for you.
Oh, absolutely, that's a great idea. And you know, before we got started, Andre and I were actually talking about the importance of community, and you know, it's community with your, and that's what we're trying to enhance here, is that community with fellow MSP owners. But there's also the ability to create community amongst your clients too. I mean, I know I was interested in a interesting story in the newspaper here, where a local restaurant, it's a very well-to-do restaurant, like local chain of restaurants, privately owned, and they had set up a program where they were working with other area businesses to provide them delivered meals, ones that were still operational during the day at discounted rates. And there's nothing wrong with putting something together with your clients, an open chat like this, a webinar, and also making connections between your different clients that might make them be able to run better and operate.
So I think we're running towards just having a handful of minutes left. And one thing I wanted to make sure that we leave some opportunity or some time for is people to share wins. Tom mentioned this at the top of the hour. I think this has been something that we've been doing in the series that is really important to do too, in addition to focusing on challenges. I think everyone's been mentioning here in the chat, having these experiences with clients where clearly you're working with them, you're offering them, you're being flexible. In a lot of cases, you're the reason why they're able to be working from home, to still be operating. So I'd love to hear some examples. Are there any cases where you feel like you or maybe your team kind of went above and beyond and kind of saved the day? You know, you had a hero moment is what we refer to them as. Are there any cases where a client has reached out to you and expressed some thanks? Last week, we had a really great example where an MSP who is providing services to I think it was like an elderly patient care, what a crazy situation to be in. One of the most hard hit or most at risk populations. The IT provider was giving them services, responding on the weekend, and the director wrote to him with this very emotional thank you that was really rewarding for him. So anything you want to share, kind of ending this on a positive note, I think would be great.
Jonathan, I've got Olivier, I think just sent this to the panelists, but we've never organized so many webinars and so many attendees.
Yeah.
I don't know if Olivier wants to jump on here, if this is webinars you put on, or we're kind of interested.
I think it is a good point. I mean, I think we've all been getting the invites to these things too, right? Everyone's doing these.
Are you there?
Yeah, I'm there. Sorry, I had the microphone cut off.
No worries. Thanks for jumping on.
Thank you. No, I've said we just say that it's very important to keep the connection with our customers, and they needed to be reinsured and they needed to be guided through. So, like you were just saying, we had a lot of praise from customer. We were doing background work for years, but they sort of lost the view on the things we were doing. And when we had to put all our workforce into converting them to remote IT, to remote working, they realized we were there to help them, how much experience, how much competence we had. And we actually received a couple letters, like you mentioned, of customers thanking us for things we do anyway, we would have done anyway. But we're very grateful that we ended it. And it's very important to communicate and to keep them informed. So we actually dedicated a new web page on our website just with information, a flow of information on COVID and the way to deal with it, and the phishing going on, the security act going on, and updates on new softwares. And the marketing people, like I was saying in the chat, are having the time of their life, organizing quizzy daily webinars and having a huge number of attendees, people very careful, they taking time to listen and discovering products and discovering usage that they never even thought existed, even though we've been telling them and we wrote to them. But this time it's getting the right echo in their mind, when before we're just trying to sell another product. So like you mentioned earlier, they finally, all those things we've been telling them for years to update their servers, update their internet lines, are having an echo and rigging as a necessity.
Right. I'm curious. Thank you so much, Olivier. And I'm interested with the webinars that you're hosting. Are they specifically, are they
Yes.
very services centric? Are you doing them on a very specific service? Are you doing it more kind of a broader thing? I guess, what are some sample topics if you recall any off the top of
Okay,
your
if
head?
you give me a second, I just haven't done so many of them myself. Just
Sure, because I mean, it's
well,
yeah, I
actually
mean,
have the page.
it does seem like a great time for people to be, like you pointed out, something more general, like something like this, or something more specific where you're providing some very specific training. Of course, all the work from home
Well,
stuff.
okay, so there are many subjects. We've been talking about many subjects. Many of them are just about the way to work remotely, how to simple general set things, how to work remotely technically, but how to organize yourself when you work from home and try to cage the work and the family life and stay organized and stay focused, even though you're not in your office and you're not surrounded by people. So things more general, things more technical on how to connect, what's the importance of a VPN, how to make sure that the email you are receiving are actually email coming from your colleagues or customers and not phishing. And because we have a big activity on sales and pay slip softwares, we had a lot of adjustment and training to advices to customer on how to set their softwares and for part-time working.
Yeah,
That's
Olivia,
like
a wide range of topics.
Yeah, I'm on your page and actually clicked on the webinars. This is very impressive because it looks like you've got, you've done several of them. You have several of them coming up, and you're doing them again and again and on different subjects. It looks great. My French isn't that good, so I'm kind of trying to figure it out as I go. But I haven't seen anyone doing it like this. I would recommend anyone take a look at the link that Olivier posted, and it's a really good example of a dedicated page to COVID-19 and then a link to the webinars, and it shows all the upcoming webinars. It's in the chat, by the way.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And I love that there's the technical topics, but there's also, I think it's a very good point to think beyond the technical things. And just because you're providing technical services doesn't mean that you can't also provide helpful advice around, you're mentioning the cultural shift around working from home. How do you manage a team? How do you manage your employees working from home? That's something that I'm sure everyone here who's an owner is thinking about actively right now too. So yeah, don't be afraid to think beyond kind of the purely technical to some of the other kind of broader issues that everyone's dealing with just in terms of management, other things like that.
Now, Olivier, that you sent a URL. It only went to all the panelists. So I don't know if you're comfortable or not,
Okay.
but we could put that into
sure,
everyone.
Yeah,
It's
of course.
if you want, or even, but just an example,
Yes,
or
please free to do it.
pull it up on the screen, either way.
Let me post it.
There you go. Even better.
And I also want to emphasize for everyone. I know we're running. We're already at 6 p.m. But if you need any input from us, if you need any content, any ideas, feel free to reach out to us, to our team here in Berlin, or to me directly. I'm more than happy to. I love discussing business with people. So if you need any ideas or anything, or any input, always reach out. Just, we're here to help. So
Yeah, if I'm going to click on that webinars link real quick, yeah, there you go. That's great. And I mean, we're probably wrapping things up. If there's anyone else who wants to jump on with us and tell us kind of their hero moment or a win, maybe it's not even IT. Maybe it's something you'd helped with another business or another MSP or one of your clients, something you did that you're kind of proud of, or it's enhanced your business or a client, something where you saved the day. Any of those things, or if not, that's fine, but we're getting close on time here, but we want to make sure anyone that wants to talk has a chance to.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a couple of kind of follow-up topics for future chats that we're considering: sales and marketing right in this moment right now, how that can be approached. Certainly one that we're considering. And then in addition to how you guys are handling your own techs, how you're adjusting from if your own team is working from home, how that adjustment's going. And then in general, after that big influx of work from home project work, how everyone's held up with an over workload, or how everyone's dealing with, in some cases, kind of a lull. That's another big topic that we could get into. And to that end, what I'll do is because we are at 6 here and a little over, just wanted to note that everyone will be getting a recording of this chat, and we'll be doing that as soon as we can. Probably be on the lookout for that tomorrow. But then in addition to that, what's kind of cool about using a Google Doc for our agenda here is that's a live document. So feel free to I'm going to be going in, me and several other members of the team will be updating this. And so we'll make sure that we update it with some of the other links to things we've talked about, to Olivia's site here. I've actually already plugged that in. But we'll also add a few more things, and we can continue some discussion there too. I'm also going to add a link to a separate document that you can actually edit, and that'll be a place where if you have any other suggestions or requests for additional topics, it can be something that you'd want to see covered in a chat like this, or if you want to, it's something that you'd like one of us here at Ninja to address with you kind of one-on-one, that's another place to add it to. Again, or the alternative is to, just as Andre suggested, feel free to reach out. Everyone's here to help, and certainly open to anything.
Great. I just wanted to throw out there, if anyone wants to, we're going to make this managed service agreement available, and the force majeure clauses. The managed service agreement, if you just respond to the email you received from Ninja that was an invite, is that right, Jonathan?
That's right.
And then if you want it, and then we'll get back to you with it. And I'm available if anyone wants to talk about the agreement specifically or anything else. If you just want to talk about where your MSP is, or any questions, or how you deal with these times. My real relevant experience moment was I went through the Great Recession. And as an interesting point there, I had probably only about 30% of my revenue coming in from managed service agreements prior to the Great Recession. And it stung me pretty hard because people were not paying up front. They were paying after we sent an invoice, which was usually weeks after we did the work, and then we wait for payment, and there wasn't a contract. And that's when I made the decision to go full managed services. And when I sold my business 6 years after that, I was at 100% managed services. So I used that opportunity of the recession to identify that I couldn't operate cash flow wise under those circumstances, and turned it into a big win for my company by transitioning to managed services. And one of the ways I did it was the agreement that you're going to see, which has been upgraded for the times, but also a very heavy sales and marketing approach to explain to clients that I could not offer the same level of services they were asking for due to situations like payment, and due to what they're asking for, that they need to be under an agreement. So there's a lot to unpack there, but if anyone out there wants to talk about how to kind of use these times to enhance your sales and marketing, I'm available to talk offline and just jump on a call for half an hour or so with you if you'd like.
All right. Well, I think that's a good, I think we've reached kind of a good stopping point, but I wanted to thank everybody again for taking time out of the day. I know it's a crazy time. Hopefully this has been helpful. And another thing you can consider doing, I know everyone here on the chat is kind of spread all over the continent there, and in the UK, but maybe take this opportunity to connect with each other too. So that's something that you can do in the chat, or something we can facilitate again in this agenda doc, which will be kind of live. And then I see Imran's asking for our contact details. I'll make sure that we add that to the agenda doc too, right after this. But Andre, any other things that you'd like to say, kind of a parting note?
Yeah, well, I think I already said my part before, but really important for me, guys. We're here to help you and make sure that you guys are successful. So whatever we can do to help you, just let us know. Be it additional webinars, be it additional content. Just reach out either to us. We will post our contact details. My team is on standby to help you. We really want to get through with this and be better when we come out on the other side.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you very much, everybody. Stay well and stay safe. And keep an eye on the agenda doc. Keep an eye out for the email, for the recording. Thanks again, everyone. Take care.
Looking forward to see everyone on the next one.
Absolutely.